泊车已完成。
Every step in the life of an electric vehicle, from production to use, faces the test of going carbon neutral.
It's really tough to achieve absolute zero carbon emission.
So many technologies in the labs seemed great at the time, but in the end, they never made it to the market.
走出这个死亡谷。
其实我一直很担心。
I'm always worried about his battery life.
Hello, I'm Yang Yang. In the last two episodes of this program, we heard how China's growing awareness of new energy vehicles' role in cutting carbon emission has translated into real actions. But challenges still lurk behind the progress.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly. Please make sure that the seatbelts has fastened and devices are in flight mode are powered out. Thank you.
I arrived in Guangzhou, the capital of South China's Guangdong province, on November 26, 2024. The streets there were filled with electric vehicles that are quietly shaping the future of green transportation in the city. I started my visit in GACIN, a subsidiary of GAC Group, a leading automobile manufacturer based in Guangzhou. Stepping into the factory where new energy cars were taking shape in rows, I was impressed by that environmentally friendly workplace. The air was fresh, and there was no smell of gasoline. There was only the hum of robotic arms moving in quiet order. A sign indicated that this was a green factory. But Huang Guihua, a senior manager from the engineering department of GACIN, told me that decarbonizing was harder than it looked.
It's really tough to achieve absolute zero carbon emission.
He said one major reason is the huge amount of energy it takes to make these cars.
Car factories use a lot of energy. Although they're not the biggest energy users, they're huge, and it all adds up. Some of the energy they use still comes from fossil fuels, like gas or coal.
For that, solar power is one answer, but it's not perfect.
Solar is unstable. When clouds block the sun, the power drops. When the sun's too strong, the power spikes.
Solar power also means higher costs.
If we switch entirely to solar, it will be way too expensive. So while we are cutting down on gas, we still need to buy carbon credits to make up for the emissions we cannot avoid. Economically speaking, that's still a heavy cost.
And it's not enough to just decarbonize the factory. Cutting emissions involves the whole supply chain. Pan Jingchi, head of the engineering department of GACIN, who just attended the 2024 UN Climate Change Conference when I met him, explained.
Manufacturing is responsible for only a small part of the emissions. Most emissions come from the materials we use upfront and how we run the vehicles once they are on the road.
When Pan mentions the materials, he referred to the upstream part of the industry, which includes the production of core components like batteries, motors, electric control systems, and their R&D. The upstream of the automobile industry covers the development and production of the auto parts. The midstream focuses on the vehicle manufacturing process, and the downstream involves sales and after-sales services. To truly reduce carbon, every part of the industry has to decarbonize. Some of China's biggest car makers are already working on it. GACIN is on this journey, and so is Xpeng, an electric vehicle company headquartered in Guangzhou. Zheng Yejing is its vice president.
When it comes to the assembly plant, it only eats up less than 10% of the total energy used across the entire production process. Real carbon reduction is not only about what happens on the assembly line. More importantly, it's about working with our suppliers to cut emissions across the whole production chain.
Brian Gu, president of Expo, echoed his view.
In addition, in order to really understand carbon neutrality, you need to make sure not just yourself, your entire supply chain is under the same umbrella to make sure it adhere to the carbon neutrality agenda.
But it's no small task cutting emissions across the entire process. One big challenge is measuring the carbon footprints in this process. Wu Changhua, a climate expert, explains.
The production of electric vehicles involves a massive supply chain. The challenge is that a lot of the carbon data just isn't there because we haven't tracked it yet. Getting detailed data costs time and money.
Bai Mei, an energy economics expert from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, elaborates further on it.
Another problem is the precise calculation of carbon emissions. The total amount of carbon emissions might be easy to figure out, but a company often makes different products, and figuring out how much energy each product uses can be hard. If there's no legal requirement, the companies won't add the cost of doing that. Coal is an issue too. Unlike standardized products, different batches of coal may have different properties, such as impurities, and thus produce different amounts of electricity, so tracking carbon emissions from each batch of coal is difficult. To really get the calculations right, power plants should have a carbon emission meter that measures carbon dioxide, just like our water meter that measures water flow. But that's not the case now. For now, emissions are calculated based on averages. They figure out the average carbon emission factor and estimate how much carbon dioxide is produced. Clearly, it's not the actual emissions attributed to the electricity being used.
This difficulty isn't exclusive to China. As is pointed out by NPJ Climate Action, an open access journal in climate action, and direct carbon outputs generated along a company's supply chain typically account for the largest portion of its overall carbon footprint. Yet currently, these emissions are often estimated using industry averages and rough approximations, which contributes to the disadvantage of carbon data calculation. To exacerbate the problem, Bai Mei says providing carbon data can be difficult due to business secret protection concerns.
A vehicle has too many parts. Each part connects with many different suppliers. The main difficulty right now is that carbon emissions can be used to calculate output, which can be a business secret. So when it comes to calculating cumulative emissions, it's tough.
A survey of 210 German companies reveals in a research report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, a multinational firm that provides accounting, auditing, and consulting services, found out that the biggest reason companies hesitate to share data through traditional business platforms is a fear of exposing core information and business secrets. Beyond carbon emissions along the supply chains, when a new energy vehicle leaves the factory and hits the road, new challenges arise. Even though electric vehicles don't produce tailpipe emissions, the energy to drive them has to come from somewhere. The power consumed by the battery and motor still leads to indirect carbon emissions. That's according to Gu Huinan, General Manager of GACIM.
Everyone knows the electricity isn't a primary energy source. We don't just dig it up. We dig up minerals, oil, but electricity is converted. It comes from coal, oil, solar energy, everything that can be converted.
So reducing energy consumption of an electric vehicle on the road is just as important. An Exxon employee told me that autonomous driving could be part of the solution.
Autonomous driving reduces the need for frequent braking and acceleration, which are common habits of human drivers. When we see a red light, we slam on the brakes. That wastes energy. But with autonomous driving, the vehicle can brake smoothly and efficiently, using less energy.
But Xpeng's Vice President Zheng Yejing pointed out the hard part isn't just building self-driving, it's making those investments paid off in features drivers can use today.
We're making long-term investments in autonomous driving with R&D efforts that have already lasted a decade. At the same time, we are placing more emphasis on features that consumers can actually see, touch, and experience in the short to mid-term. These are features they'll be able to enjoy inside the car within the next year or two, giving them a real sense of advanced technology. Striking a balance between these two priorities is challenging.
General Manager of GACIN Gu Huinan added that in an industry where everything evolves fast, a new technology must prove its value in the market before you call it a success.
Take autonomous driving, for example. We've put in a lot of resources, but the return hasn't matched the investment. Technology is evolving so fast that before you start to make money, it's time for an upgrade again.
Climate expert Wu Changhua points out that some technologies never even get off the ground.
So many technologies in the labs seemed great at the time, but in the end, they never made it to the market.
According to China Automotive Low Carbon Action Plan, compared to traditional gasoline cars, electric vehicles reduce carbon emissions by 43.4%. The International Energy Agency estimates that to meet the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, global NEV sales need to hit around 45 million units by 2030. And according to EV Tank, in 2023, global sales of China's new energy vehicles surpassed 60% of the world's total. As the world's largest NEV market, China is a key player in the global effort to reduce carbon emissions and promote sustainable development. But even though Chinese consumers are increasingly embracing NEVs, there are still concerns.
I'm always worried about his battery life.
They've packed it with features and focus on computing power, but does it matter to us? Only time will tell.
Unlike a gas-powered car, an electric one accelerates and decelerates more rapidly. I'm not very used to that.
Beyond consumer concerns, China's EV makers also face considerable challenges in the export markets. As the country's new energy vehicles make their way overseas, some observers believe that China's NEV industry is running into overcapacity. Wu Changhua disagrees.
I don't think we're overproducing. Overcapacity means more goods have been produced than are needed, right? But from the perspective of tackling climate change, what we're doing now isn't enough. Look at the number of NEVs in China. It's a small percentage compared to all types of vehicles. How can there be overcapacity?
And it's not just about selling cars abroad. Hu Huinan from GACIN pointed out that software localization is also a complex process.
Take smart connectivity, for instance. When you go abroad, your map might not work, your music might not play, you might have to use someone else's navigation. Even things like databases, you need to build them locally. For example, if I want to monitor the battery's temperature remotely, it's very difficult to send that data back to China. These are huge challenges.
At the same time, taking part in global discussions on carbon emissions and establishing international standards is another formidable task for China's NEV sector. Zheng Yejing added.
In Europe, some observers still raise questions about China's carbon emission data. If we want to be part of shaping global standards, we need to make sure our data is clear and verifiable. And that means ongoing dialogue and building mutual understanding.
Achieving carbon neutrality concerns various parties. It isn't just any one country's responsibility, it's a global mission. While China's making strides in cutting emissions, it will take the collective effort of everyone to achieve net zero.
Reducing emissions and protecting the environment is something the whole society needs to work on.
We need to work together in every field to achieve this goal.
We must stay firm, stick to the right path, and be patient.